I got so sick that when we would sit down as a family and watch TV, I couldn't hold my head up. It would just kind of go over to the side. I couldn't hold it up. So I would just start going to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, because why be awake if this is your existence?
Aimee, how did you find carnivore?
Well, I could start on the day I started, or the day I found it, but I really should go back to cover my whole health history because it's kind of interesting. And I'll try to be brief in the beginning because it's a long history. Since I'm 69 years old, I'm going to be 70 in July. So you get to experience a lot when you've lived this long. So when I was a kid, my sister described me as sickly, but I was constipated and sick a lot, and I had chronic headaches. Then when I was 15, I got really bad acne. So my parents put me on antibiotics. And then a year later, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So at 16, I've been a type 1 diabetic for 54 years. So then, let's see, I went to university, and the month I got out, I started going to the library and checking out books about health. It was just an interest, and then I finally had time to read. So I became a vegetarian, deciding that that was the best diet to be on. And I got interested in healing and got convinced by reading all these health books that I was reading a lot, and Adele Davis and Jethro Kloss and Back to Eden and Pavo Airola, all these pioneers in the health movement. They all believed that you could heal stuff. And I wanted to heal my type 1 diabetes. And I was convinced, if people can heal from cancer, why can't I heal from type 1 diabetes? So that's kind of what I tried to do for many years. And I just kept trying different diets. I tried different herbs. I've tried different body therapies, all kinds of stuff. And while I did get my insulin doses down pretty good and I was pretty healthy, I could, I was always ready for a new diet, whatever it was. So by the time I had 3 kids, got married, had 3 kids. I was pretty healthy, but I was just disappointed that I wasn't able to get my insulin doses lower and stuff like that. So when I was 42 in 1996, I found low carb, and I got Dr. Bernstein's book that had just come out. A lot of carnivores know about him. He's a type 1 diabetic who pioneered the low carb movement for diabetes, all forms of diabetes. And so I went low carb, which means less than 30 grams of carbs a day, which is a lot lower than most people call low carb. It's pretty low. In 1996. And I had, leading up to that, I kind of forgot that part. I was starting to get really sick and what I didn't realize, they were all diabetes complications. I had frozen shoulders, frozen hips. I had what they sometimes call stiff man syndrome. Like it would take me a whole minute to get up out of a chair. It would, if I tried to sit on the floor, if I could get on the floor, and then if I could get back up. And I was only 42 years old, but I was so stiff and slow to uncreak myself, which kind of led to my depression. And then I got so sick that when we would sit down as a family and watch TV, I couldn't hold my head up. It would just kind of go over to the side. I couldn't hold it up. So I would just start going to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, because why be awake if this is your existence? And I wasn't bedbound or anything. You know, I was fairly healthy in some weird ways, but I was pretty bad off. So then I found Dr. Bernstein because a friend mailed me an article by him about frozen shoulder, because she was a type 1 diabetic, also with a frozen shoulder. So she sent me the article, and at the end, I read it. At the end of the article, there was an offer for cassette tapes explaining his method of low carb and taking, they call it intensive insulin therapy, which means that you're taking insulin 5 times a day. You take it for every meal, and you take a slow acting in the morning and a long acting in the evening. So it adds up to 5 shots a day. And before that, I had resisted taking more than just 1 shot a day because that's how they taught me when I was first diagnosed. And that's how they taught all type 1 diabetics, just to take 1 shot a day. And we didn't even have blood testers back then. We had to test our urine, and we didn't have any fast acting insulin either. So if our blood sugars, our urine sugars were high, there was nothing we could do except not eat for a few hours. So it was a kind of crazy world, and it's so much better now. But so let's see, that brings me to low carb. Oh, after I started the low carb and the more intense insulin, all my symptoms went away. I got healthy. Nothing was frozen. I could move. I was just like a normal person. It was amazing. So I really enjoyed learning about low carb, and that led me to reading about low carb for all people. So I read Protein Power, and I had been a vegetarian, so I had to force feed myself, and I would only eat white meat. So I ate chicken and turkey and tuna fish and vegetables. And I hadn't eaten red meat in so long that I was afraid of it, just like we all were, it was evil. So I did strict low carb for 7 years. And towards the end of the 7 years, I mean, I've done it all the way through, but I did it just like Bernstein directs you to for 7 years. I was just living my life, and I wasn't healing. So I heard about this family who the son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and the mother put him on a raw vegan diet, and he never had to go on insulin. So I discovered the raw vegan diet and started the next day. I did the raw vegan diet for 7 years. I don't know what it is about this 7, but so I did the raw vegan diet for 7 years. And at first I really liked it. It was wonderful. I even had a company where I sold raw vegan snack food. I made onion bread and granola and all kinds of stuff. I had 18 dehydrators in my house going off all day long. And I was getting pretty well known in the raw vegan movement. And it was quite a movement at the time. It was, the years were 2003 to 2010. We gave talks, we had seminars, we had superhero seminars, followed David Wolf. He's still around, but not a raw vegan anymore. But, it was a big deal. During that time, I did a lot of juice fasting. I did a lot of colonics. I could get my insulin dose down to 0 after a 5-day fast, but it didn't last. And I kept thinking I was going to heal, and it just never happened. My daughter and a lot of our friends were also raw vegan, and they were starting to have really serious health issues. The women in the movement couldn't get pregnant. They were losing their cycle. My husband's teeth were rotting out, and my joints were sore again. but that was the only issue I had. But all my support system they were all going to start eating meat and cooked food. And it was January 1st, 2010. My daughter says, Mom, you can try it, and if you don't like it, you can go back to eating raw vegan. So that day I ate scrambled eggs and butter. And we have this amazing butter contact where we get raw butter. I still buy from this lady. We get raw butter that is grass fed on a farm in the next state over in New Hampshire, and it's amazing butter. So anyway, so then I introduced red meat, and it was the first time I had eaten red meat in 35 years. So I was raised on red meat. My dad worked for Swift and Company Meats. He was like a general superintendent from a meat packing company. So, but the meat that I ate from a local farm, it was instantly the most nutritious feeling I had ever felt in my whole life. It's like all the lights turned on. It was like, I'll never go back. This is amazing. So the keto diet, while I was researching this, so we started the keto diet, and I was really serious. I did all the research. I read books. I read Weston Price, which helped me make the transition. I read The Vegetarian Myth by Leah Keith. I don't know if you know of her, but I just heard her interview with Ken Berry. She's still around. Wonderful book. Helped me a lot in the beginning to switch over from raw vegan to the keto diet. So while we were doing keto, we got into local farm, buying local food from local farms. And in Maine, that's where I live, we could buy all of our food from local farms. And it was amazing. And we did that the whole time we were keto. It was really awesome. So stayed keto for 8 years. And then my husband and I were on a trip. He was a well-known artist. And we did teaching workshops where we would travel across the United States for 5 months out of the year. And we were on one of those trips with nothing to do but sit in a car, between workshops. And we started looking at YouTube. And we were probably watching some kind of keto person. I can't remember who, but the Joe Rogan podcast came up, and I don't remember who was first, but we listened to Sean Baker, then we listened to Michaela Peterson and Jordan Peterson. And my husband says, I'm starting tomorrow. No, I'm starting today. So he was convinced. And we were on a trip, and I'm type 1 diabetic, and I'm like, I just don't know. I'm going to start the day we get back. So we got back November 12th, 2018, and that's when I started carnivore. I was just convinced that if I did carnivore hard enough, I'd be able to get off insulin, or at least be the healthiest I could. That my goals started again, changed, morphed to I would just want to be the healthiest I can be. Because through all the years of trying to get off of insulin, I might have neglected my health just because I was pushing so hard to get off of insulin, which might be an impossible thing to do. So now I just want to be the healthiest I can be. I was attracted to carnivore because I wanted to avoid dementia and Alzheimer's, and I wanted to be healthy as I aged, because by the time I got into carnivore, I was in my 60s, and I wanted to be as healthy as I could be. So I was just convinced that carnivore was the way to do it, and I've been doing it. I wasn't in my 60s yet. Let me think about this. Yes, I was. Wait, 5 years. Oh, I was 64 when I started carnivore. So I'm 69 now. I've been carnivore 5 years. This life arithmetic gets kind of crazy.
How is with the type 1 diabetes now after 5 or 6 years?
Well, it's interesting. I did do 3 months on the lion diet, which was the best. My insulin requirements did go way, way, way down, but I had a hard time wanting to stay on it. It was so difficult to just eat beef and lamb and nothing else. And I missed decaf and eggs and bacon, basically. So I quit. That was in 2020 that I did 3 months, and I haven't been able to talk myself back into doing that. So my diabetes is great. I am on the least amount of insulin that I've ever been on long term. I take about 12 units a day total, which isn't very much. And I feel the best I've ever felt on any of the crazy diets I've been on. And it's it seems lasting. Like I can really look forward to my future and I know I'm going to be healthy.
So you said you're on about 12 units a day. Just for the layperson like myself, like what would an average number of units be for someone with type 2 diabetes eating a regular diet?
Type 2 or type 1?
Sorry, type 1.
I mean, type
Type 1.
1. It really does vary. I know some type 1s who take 60 units of insulin. Um, I know some who take around 20, 25. It really varies on how many carbs they eat and whether they're into health or not. I mean, a type 1 diabetic who just eats whatever they want to eat, I actually really don't know. They might take 100 units. I don't know, or 40 or 50. I, I don't know.
As you say, the this is the best it's ever been. So I this is it just feels like life is more normal. You don't have the pain anymore. Um Everything's pretty good that way.
Right. I'm almost 70 and I have no pain anywhere in my body. I have no complaints. I mean, I do. Carnivore is not magic, it's not perfect. I'm dealing with a little high blood pressure right now and trying to get it down without taking medication. Um, so that's kind of my job right now because I recently got a cataract taken out of my left eye and I still have to do the right eye. They do it one by one, a month apart. And during the surgery for my cataract, my blood pressure went alarmingly high. And they told me if I don't get it down, if it goes that high in the next surgery, they won't do it. So I'm like, it's in a week from today. So I've got a week left to get my blood pressure down, and it's still a little bit high. And, I'm always amazed at these stories of carnivores who like, I got off my blood pressure medicine in 2 months. Well, mine has gone up. I do think it's almost like because of the blood sugar going high sometimes, it's almost like I eat carbs and my body doesn't really know the difference. I'm certainly not eating carbs. I'm like, I never cheat. I'm always carnivore, but my body doesn't really know that a high blood sugar doesn't mean that I'm eating carbs. I kind of think that's what's going on. So the best thing I could do is to make sure I never have high blood sugar, which isn't always easy because it's really a guess. When you take your insulin, you eat a meal, you eat like a burger and an egg or something, and you say, well, I think that looks like 1.5 units, or maybe it's two, and then you might have guessed wrong. So it's always a little bit of a guess, but it's really important to keep your blood sugars level as much as you can.
Well, so when you think about that, when you think about like it's a guess to try and work out what you're doing, I mean, on carnivore, when you have such a kind of limited amount of things that you're eating compared to a regular diet, with a regular diet, that kind of estimating how much insulin you need must be a bit of a nightmare.
Well, it's actually in some ways, I think it might be easier because they can figure out what their carb ratio is and just take insulin to cup. They're taking larger amounts, but they can just figure out how many units of insulin is goes with how many carbs. So in a way, it was easier to figure out because I'm not dealing with carbs. I'm dealing with protein but it's when protein, it doesn't really turn into sugar, but as it's being digested, your liver produces sugar to from the protein.
Is that gluconeogenesis?
Yes, that's the word I was trying to remember. Yeah, gluconeogenesis. So it's different because it's not even sorry. Um, it's not even the protein digesting. It's how much glu- gluca- glucagon that your liver decides to pump out. And if you're stressed or something, it might pump out even more. So it's not always super predictable.
I see. Wow. Um, so right now, how are you eating?
Well, that's an interesting. I could have answered that last week really easily by just saying beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Because last week I was eating eggs and bacon for breakfast, something like a chuck roast for lunch, and a burger and eggs at night. That was my diet. But um, I've decided to change a few things to try to help my blood pressure to come down. So I've put bacon aside for a little while. And the only reason is that I really like bacon. I like it too much. It's almost like an addictive food to me. And it's made with questionable salt. So, carnivores have this thing for using really good salt. I use Redmond salt all the time, and I never use any other kind of salt. Well, you buy bacon at the grocery store, you don't know what kind of salt it's made with. It's just junk salt. So I decided I'd give up bacon for a while. And then there's all these questions about, well, do PUFAs cause blood pressure to be high? And so there's PUFAs in bacon and bacon grease. And I cook in bacon grease all the time. So for the last 2 days and until I have my next cataract surgery, I will be using only butter on poached or boiled eggs for my breakfast. And I may or may not eat something that goes with that. Sometimes I buy beef fat trimmings, and that's kind of like the bacon replacement. Um, so that's breakfast. But I had poached eggs and butter this morning. I had beef ribs for lunch, and tonight I'll probably eat a burger with some butter. So pretty basic. And I also used to drink decaf coffee, and I've given that up for the blood pressure, and I'm drinking hot water.
If someone is watching this that is a type 1 diabetic, um, and they're thinking, I want to get my insulin under control, how would you recommend they get started?
Well, that's interesting because I actually coach. I do have a group coaching, and I coach type 1 and type 2 diabetics. And we start out like I ask them how they're doing, what kind of help do you want, and I do it from the framework of we're going to be carnivores. So I just say replace all your meals with meat, whatever meat you like, and figure out how much it takes for you to get satisfied. And start off with a modest amount of insulin and try that, and then for your next meal see how that works. And it's trial and success. I don't like that trial and error thing. It's trial and success. You try it, you see if it works. So that's basically what I tell them.
Nice. So, if people want to reach out to you, do you have a YouTube or Instagram or a website or anything?
Yeah, I have all three. So I'm really active on Instagram, and it's just my name, Aimee, Aimee Fields, my maiden name, Fields, Perrin, Perin. That's Instagram and Facebook. And I'm really good at answering direct message and Facebook Messenger. And then I recently started a YouTube channel. It's called Brisket Boomers, and I called it that. Actually, that was a suggestion from my daughter. Um, I call it that because I want to help older people who are interested in health, but they just don't know what to do. So I have several videos about kind of starting carnivore and how to do it, and some of my experiences and stuff. And I started the channel because I had older friends who they they are afraid to change their diet. They're afraid to disagree with their doctor. They've been going to doctors for so long, and they do whatever the doctor tells them to do, and they just don't have faith in just doing an experiment. So that was my YouTube channel, is kind of an answer to that. Like, don't be afraid to disagree with your doctor. It's your body. You can experiment. It's okay. My website is also Aimee Fields Perrin. And the website might be a little bit confusing because coaching is on there, but I also have blogs that are on there, carnivore and keto blog, and my paintings. So I'm an artist, and I do paintings, and they're on my website too.
Oh, very nice. What kind of paintings do you do?
I do small-ish still life, oil paint and still life. A lot of them have to do with um, dishes and coffee and cups of coffee and cups of tea and vintage dishes and arrangements of dishes, basically. Yeah, that was, and occasionally flowers.
Oh, very nice. Well, Amy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed it.